Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So the flip-flopper has flip-flopped in a good way, as, from the Mail Online, you won't need a COVID passport to visit the pub. Boris Johnson shelves plans to bring in controversial certification scheme. So, jolly good. The idea with this is from the pushback from scientists, as well as the rest of us, which, let's face it, is more important, is to say, yeah, we're looking to get things getting back in June, and of course you've had such a big push for vaccinations and saying that so many people are vaccinated, in which case we don't really need to worry about such things. Seeing as the majority of Britons at this point have had at least one dose of a vaccination against coronavirus, or COVID-19, then we're pretty much on our way, if not done by June. Surely. If you look at, of course, who's at most risk, then yes, most certainly by June that will have all been done. So it is actually good news that Boris Johnson has decided to change his tune again, as he is wont to do, and this time it seems to be positive. Of course, take that with a pinch of salt, because hey, seeing as he's known for flip-flopping and changing his mind a lot, he can always change his mind again. But as it stands, credit where it's due, yes. Even if you have a bad idea one day, if the next day you realise that your first idea was awful and therefore recant it, then credit where it's due, and let's support that stance at the very least. So it says, Boris Johnson has shifted focus of COVID passport scheme away from hospitality. Officials ordered to concentrate on devising system to enable foreign travel, and it follows backlash from Tory MPs and hospitality industry about COVID passports. And when it comes to international travel, I'm sure you've seen the videos, the photos, the articles of wealthy Indians on their private jets just getting back like 15 minutes before the deadline in order to ensure that they were in the UK. And what's been happening in India is, of course, terrible from a COVID perspective, where they seem to have had a terrible third wave. I think that's what it is out there now. And so a load of support is being sent out there with what they call excess vaccinations, which then runs into the idea of getting everybody in the world injected with the vaccine. I'll leave it at that. So, as we say, there's clearly been a lot of pushback against such a thing, which is lovely. And it says the move follows a furious backlash from Tory MPs and parts of the hospitality industry about the idea of forcing people to produce papers for the pub. And yes, if you wish to understand what it is that Conservatives stand for, I'm sure that most of my audience at this point understand that the Conservatives don't really hold the values that they used to, or what it is that is supposed to be archetypical of a Conservative, and that is why, of course, there has to be the delineation between small c Conservative and big C Conservative. Because when it comes down to saying limited government, then what do the big C Conservatives really stand for? They don't at all. They are kind of reactionaries, but 30 years out of date, or thereabouts. They are reactionaries against what the Conservative Party was 30 years ago. Bear in mind, with career politicians, that some of these guys were there 30 years ago, and so they're arguing against their own point, but their arguments haven't developed. They basically just go on with what will get them power. And that isn't to say they're furthering their agenda, because they're not. The way that they're going is, of course, antithetical to their values, in which case you cannot say that they're trying to use the slippery slope in their favour. Instead, they're doing the speed limit instead of accelerating off a cliff, but they're doing nothing in order to try and swing the pendulum back the other way. And the same goes with this. That you might think, oh, but not going with COVID passports, surely that's more of a smaller government ideal, in which case they're pushing the pendulum back the other way. But of course that isn't quite accurate, because when were there COVID passports? Exactly. So if there haven't been any, then they're not pushing the pendulum back, they're just allowing it to swing slower than would be required by the left. That is essentially what they're doing. So what? That they're just trying to slow the change down in order for the Overton window to shift slowly enough so that they get enough people on side and therefore maintain the majority. That seems to be it. That, of course, if you try and name a party that's got any hope whatsoever that is more right-wing than the Conservatives, you're going to be struggling. Sure, you'll get a couple of names, but then you realise that they haven't really got any chance. I mean, you might, of course, go down the path of UKIP, or what was the Brexit Party, or Patriotic Alternative, for example, or the Reclaim Party. But then you go, well, yeah, but these guys aren't heavy hitters. So, at that point, your only hope is that the field is diversified enough. So as the Conservatives are inevitably leaving their own base, that the vote is going to be split enough that it is going to warrant the thought by enough people that they do not actually have to vote for the Conservatives in order to vote against communism or against Labour, and they can actually vote for a more accurate reflection of their own values. Because, of course, in a first-past-the-post system that we've got, that is the way that the cookie crumbles, as they say. So that's how it stands. As one government source said, I would be amazed if we introduced COVID certification for hospitality this summer. The focus is more on big events and reopening sectors that we struggled to open last year. With that in mind, the only place where they're thinking, maybe it is worthwhile, is for much larger venues, as leading sports bodies, including the FA, the Premier League, the England and Wales Cricket Board, and the Lawn Tennis Association, have urged ministers to investigate a COVID certification scheme if it is the only way to get venues full this summer. Several leading figures from the arts sector have also backed the call. And that is basically just to say that they're not for it, but they're just desperate to be profitable again and allow themselves to get back to any semblance of normality that they might be permitted to do so. So that, as they report, any scheme would also allow people to show they have had COVID in the previous 6 months or that they have had a recent negative test instead of producing their vaccination status. So it's not going for the hospitality sector, it's going for entertainment and international travel more so, dependent on whether or not it is a necessity. So essentially, of course, if you wish for the most efficient outcome, then you get the government to simply leave you alone in their entirety. But failing that, then it is the reluctant compromise that they're going after to say, okay, fine. If you insist, then can we get it done now, please? That's it for me. Let me know what you guys think down below in terms of, do you think that the government has bitten off more than they can chew here? And although they're trying to say that they're going to be arbitrary protector, the arbiter of justice, whatever they understand that to mean, that in this scenario when things are so quickly moving that they cannot actually keep up, and therefore in order to not show that they're incompetent as we understand them to be, they have to figure out some kind of excuse in order to explain why they're not doing what they want to be doing, which in this case is giving or requiring vaccination passports, because they can't do it. Just look at track and trace, for example, track and trace, that's trace and track, test and trace. But whatever scheme that they've ploughed too many billions of pounds into and still came out with something useless, that they understand that they're useless at their job, and of course understand that cannot be known by the general public, in which case they will shelve such ideas that would jeopardize their monopoly on power under the guise of saying that they're doing us a favour, because they have to control the frame. Let me know down below. I was intrigued to hear what you guys have to say, and of course, as always, until next time, have a good one.